Hi, thanks for tuning in to Reddirtrodz. Now today we're working on a C2 Chevy Corvette. Now the C2 is the second generation that was built from 1963 to 1967, also considered to be the ultimate Corvette. Now when we first started this project, everybody we talked to told us that the biggest headache on this project was going to be the headlights. But once we got started on it, we found out it really wasn't that tough. There's just a couple of tricks. So we're going to take you through the entire process and show you how to install a set of headlights in your C2 Corvette.
Okay, so here we've already got our motor installed, but in order to get the Y-stop set correctly, we're actually going to pull this motor back off. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a 7/16 inch socket. Remove this bolt. We're going to pivot that around so we don't lose the bolt. We're going to reinstall it here. This also serves as our ground. Now then, we need to remove this keeper. Let's use a hook. Pop it off and set it aside so you don't lose it. Next, slide the motor off. Here you can see all the pieces of the stopping mechanism. This is the Y stop right here. This is the open stop, and this is the closed stop. As we roll the headlight, you can see how that works. When this is in the full open position, this right here, see that? That should trigger this switch. Now, from the factory, this is actually a switch that tells a lamp to come on inside the car. But we're going to convert it to a limit switch. And when the headlight is fully open, it will cut the power to the motor. And conversely, when it is closed, we're going to convert this pad right here to have a similar switch. Now, obviously it's not drilled. That's what we're going to do now. We're going to take this out and we're going to drill it. Now, we don't have to disassemble this portion from the vehicle. This can all stay there. Since we pulled the motor off, we have enough room to move around. First things first, we're going to set our limit switch. Okay, now here is the Y-stop with the stops installed. Now from previous experience, we figured out that about half the width of a fingertip is about the right amount on both sides. Now you'll have to adjust it because every car is different, but that's a good starting point. Okay, so what we've done here is use some tape to secure our headlight bucket from the bumper bracket to a headlight in the position that we want to set the headlights up at. Now this is all, you can always fine-tune this once everything is installed, but this is what we're going to set as our base. Okay, we've already set this one up and we're using it as a guide to match the other side. Now we've reinstalled our thread stop, and what we want to do is carefully roll this up, paying attention to the width. We want to keep this aligned, so we don't want the headlight bucket to move side to side, so you need to pay attention to that. Now once we have it close, which If we wiggle this a little bit, you can hear it triggering. So this is most likely going to be a pretty good spot. We're going to go ahead and tighten down the Y stop. You can get it snug. You don't need to fully tighten it because we may want to adjust it. Now with this tight, it shouldn't move by hand. Using hand pressure, this shouldn't move. So now we're going to untape it. We're going to roll the assembly over to the closed position. Now looking at the top, I can see that it's not quite flush. So what I'm going to do is thread this thread this bolt in. It's still not quite flush up top. So here's one of those situations where I'm going to have to move this Y-stop just a little bit. So I want to get this headlight bucket positioned exactly where I want it, with it tight up against this stop. Then I'm going to hand tighten the bolt, okay, and then make sure it stays in its position. And now we're going to tighten it with the wrench. Again, just snugging it up. So we're going to check it here. We're looking pretty good. Yeah, we're looking just about right on the closed position. Now we're going to roll this over to the open position. And it's going to be a little bit off. So what we're going to do is open that bolt just a little bit. Alright, and that's exactly where we want it. Now, this is good to go, so we're going to go ahead and tighten this down. Now these motors are pretty powerful, so if this isn't tight enough, when the motor slams it shut like this or brings it open, it can actually, the force can cause this to move. So you want to make sure that your clamp bolt is nice and tight. You don't want to strip it, you just want to make sure it's tight. Okay, that feels pretty good. Now we're going to check our full range of motion. And we're looking pretty good. Now, I'm going to flip it to the open position. Now we need to drill this. Okay, so we decided on a 3/8 inch drill bit. We've got that chucked into our drill. You want to be careful right there at the end. Okay, now we can check our fit. Slides in pretty good. Okay, now what we need to do is take a scratch awl, hold our switch in position where we like it, stick the scratch awl through the original holes on the switch, and mark the bracket. Okay, we've got a 7/64 drill bit. And we're going to set this up, get it lined up with our marks. Now we reinstall our limit switch and thread in the bolt. With the switch installed, we're ready to remount the motor. Now, because we've moved everything around, we have to find the spot where this motor will go. Let's see. again, like earlier, this just slips right on, and then we reinstall the pin. Now we come over here and we can reinstall the bracket. We also need to mount a ground wire for this. Well, the trick to this is to push the bracket up, get it lined up, and get that started. Then come in with a nut driver and tighten it up.
The cool part about this project is the power motors on the headlights. Now, the original system from the factory, you used a separate switch to open and close the headlights. And we're changing that over to make this a one-step process. And we're going to use a relay to make that happen. Now, a relay is basically just an automatic switch, for lack of a better word. And what we're going to do here, your standard 5-pin relay is what we're going to use. Now, each pin has a different function. 86 and 85 are your trigger pins in the configuration that we're going to use them. So what we're going to do is 86 is going to go to the headlight wire. That's going to take a signal from the headlight power, and when you click the headlights on, this pole here will get 12 volts. Pole 85 will go straight to ground. Then the fun part is 30, 87A, and 80. I'm sorry, 30, 87A, and 87. 30 is going to get 12 volts constant, so this is basically going to go to the battery. 87A, when this is in the resting position, as in the headlights are off, when this is in resting position, 87A will have 12 volts applied to it. That will close the headlamps. When the headlights come on and pole 86 gets energized, the mechanism inside the relay will switch. It will cut off power from 87A, and it will send power to 87. This is going to be the open terminal. And you're sitting there thinking, oh, well, now you're going to have power going to the headlights at all times, to the headlight motors. Yes and no. When the headlights roll open and click that switch, it opens up the circuit that sends power from the relay to the motor. So we've got one for open and one for close. So as soon as that headlight reaches the stop and triggers that switch, it shuts off. When you're stripping wires, you only want to strip enough to fit inside the terminal. So as you can see here, we're just taking out about 1/4 inch, and that'll give you plenty to fit inside the metal terminal portion of your terminal, the crimp portion. The wire we're using, like I said, is a 12 gauge primary. This actually comes from Painless Performance. So there's the basic wiring harness. The long strands, we're going to go ahead and connect. We're going to use green for open and the brown for close. So the green will go to pole 87, and the larger brown wire will go to terminal 87A.
And as you can see here, we've gone ahead and mounted another limit switch so we can keep everything on one side. That way we only have one set of wires going to the other side. We're using green for open, which is the top switch, and brown for bottom, which is the bottom switch. And then we are going to pull our wires over to the motor. Now you do need to know which per terminal is open, and that's pretty easy to figure out once you have everything hooked up. Alright, now all this is wired up. Now we can test it.